Valentina served more than 7 years for the murder of the swindler's husband. When she was released, she began to live in an abandoned trailer with 2 homeless people, collecting cardboard and scrap metal. One day she found a phone. Turning on what she saw, blood froze in my veins. Dear friends, before continuing, write which corner of the world you have joined us from. Don't forget to like and enjoy listening. The iron gates bared behind their backs with such finality, as if fate itself had put a fat point. Valentina stood on the verge of freedom, with a crumpled certificate of release in her hands and 200 bills in her pocket. Washed jacket, 7 years, 4 months, and 11 days. That is how much Themis measured her for a crime that she did not commit. The April sun beat unusually brightly in her eyes. Behind the barbed wire, the world continued to rotate, not noticing how human destinies broke in it. Valentina closed her eyes, trying to stop the trembling in her knees. 42 years is an age when life only comes into force, and it has only the ashes of the past and foggy. Unknown ahead. The bus to Tevere dragged along the bumpy road, bouncing on bumps. The fellow travelers, the same liberated with tired faces, were silent. Everyone thought about their own. Valentina pressed a worn bag to her chest with a simple belongings, a change of linen, a notebook with addresses, and a photograph of parents in a homemade cardboard frame. On the Moscow-Tevere train, for the first time in years, she heard the melodic trill of a mobile phone. Young. The girl in the next compartment was chatting to a friend about the new Motorola and credit cards. Valentina listened as a foreign language. These words existed in the world from which she was pulled out in the distant 97th. Kazansky railway station. Met her with the bustle and smell of fresh pastries from the station stalls. Moscow has changed beyond recognition. Store signs with English names shone everywhere. People dressed brighter and spoke louder. On board. Again young men with slicked hair saying something quickly in a handheld-sized tube. First of all, the passport office. Valentina got there for 2 hours, getting confused about the new street names and unfamiliar metro stations. The line stretched for half a block. People stood with a set of certificates, as if preparing for an exam in bureaucracy. Next, the aunt bagged behind the window, not looking up from the papers. Valentina handed out a certificate of release and temporary certificate, recovery of the passport, 30 working days, gas duty, 200 rubles, registration certificate, 2 photos. The next one. Excuse me, but how do I get a registration certificate if I don't have a passport? The official finally looked up, tired, indifferent, seeing thousands of similar applicants. These are your problems. We do not draw up without documents. The next one. On the street, Valentina sat down on a bench and took out the address of her home, 4 Moskvoreshi Klementovsky Lane, House 17. Her childhood was spent there. There are memories of the parents. There was a mansion with a collection of grandmother's headscarves. The trolley bus drove her to familiar places. The lane has changed. Old houses, purchased fresh plaster, expensive foreign cars appeared in the courtyards. Children in bright jackets played on the street. In the windows of the first floor, where her living room was, there were tulle curtains with a golden pattern. Valentina pressed intercom button. A shaking voice did not immediately answer. Who is there? Good afternoon, this is Valentina Ostashova. I've lived here before. We don't know anyone like that. Our house is already 5 years old, you know, I just got free. And this house, listen, citizen, do not fool your head. We bought the house by law. The documents are in order. Get out of here, or we'll call the police. The intercom fell silent. Valentina stood in front of the gate of her own house, like a beggar. Through the bars I saw well-groomed, the courtyard where her mother's lilac once grew. Now there was a playground with a plastic slide. By evening I got to the building of the Inter-District Prosecutor's office. The prosecutor on duty listened to her in the half. Ostashova, the case of the 98th year. He ran his eyes over the computer. The verdict entered into force. Appeals are rejected. The question is closed. But I am innocent. My husband is alive. He set me up. Citizen Ostashova, the prosecutor, is tired. Wiped the bridge of his nose. The case can only be reviewed if there is new evidence that could not have been known to the court at the time of sentencing. Do you have such evidence? No. But then without new evidence, the case is not subject to review. Contact law offices. Maybe they'll come up with something. Goodbye. Leaving the prosecutor's office, Valentina felt like a song in a huge, indifferent world. Evening. I had to spend the night somewhere but 200 rubles. This is a penny even by the standards of a roadside hostel. She returned to her native lane and settled in the entrance of a neighboring house. Conciergeska, an elderly woman in a warm robe, first wanted to drive the tramp away, but something in Valentine's face stopped her. "Where are you from?" "From places not so remote," Valentina answered honestly. "I understand." The woman was silent. "You will spend one night, and tomorrow you will look. Shelter. I will not call the police, but it is impossible to stay for a long time." In the morning, the concierge gave the address of the shelter and Angel and treated them to hot tea. "Hold on, daughter." God endured and told us. At the shelter, Valentina was warned immediately, maximum 3 of the day. Then the place must be freed up for others. During these days, she offended dozens of offices trying to find work. Everywhere they demanded a passport, registration, workbook, and she only had a certificate of release, a document that scares away employers better than a crude bacillus. On the 4th day, I had to look for earnings on the street. People with wastepaper carts and bags of cans crowded near the collection point. Valentina approached 2 men who took apart a pile of cardboard boxes. "May I join you?" The older, thin man in his 50s with smart eyes looked her from head to toe. "Stepanok, my name, and this is Kolyan." He nodded at the Red Man Inn, a sweaty leather cow. "You're a case of the wrong place." Valentina did not hide one of those. "What did you sit for?" "For the murder of her husband whom she did not kill." Stepanovich looked closely into her eyes as if he had read her entire story. "I see. Well, that Kolyunya. Let's take a comrade into circulation." Kolyunya, who had been silent before, suddenly spoke in a soft, intelligent voice. "Stepan Ivanovich, maybe he should. It will be hard for one." All day they wandered through garbage dumps and containers, collecting waste paper and scrap metal. By the evening we earned 30 rubles each, per person, enough for bread and milk. Stepanok took Valentina to an abandoned construction trailer on the outskirts. "While you recontour here, warm, dry, a little debris. The district police officer does not walk, he is too lazy to drag here." The trailer smelled of old wood and machine oil. In the corner there was an iron stove. There are homemade bunks near the wall. Valentina sat down on the edge of the bed and suddenly started crying, for the first time since my release. Not from self-pity, from gratitude to these ordinary people who did not turn away, were not afraid of her past. Stepanok awkwardly patted her on the shoulder. "Nothing, Valentina. I once thought it was over. I was sitting down from the property, took boards from the factory for the dacha, but it turned out that life was just beginning. The main thing is not to get angry at all white, light, and Kolyunya. Kolyunya, a former physicist, candidate of sciences, hit the bottle after the divorce, lost everything. But the person is good, you just need to approach him correctly." At night, Valentina lay on a hard bed and listened to the sound of rain on the iron roof. The world met her indifferently, refused her home, work, even a passport. But there were people who extended a helping hand, not expecting anything in return. Somewhere outside the window in this big city lived a man who stole 7 years of her life. He enjoyed the freedom he took from her. Valentina was stamping her fists. "She'll find a way to prove her innocence. We'll definitely find." May crept up unnoticed, wrapping the city. Warm young foliage. The construction trailer, which became a home, smelled of warmed wood and fresh air that penetrated through the cracks in the walls. Valentina woke up at first light. A prison habit that does not. Get rid of in a month of freedom. Prayer first. She took out a worn paper icon of St. Nicholas the Wonder Worker from her breast pocket. A gift from a fellow inmate of faith before liberation. The icon darkened from frequent touches, the edges were cut off, but the saint's face looked from it calmly and wisely. "Our Father, and go to heaven," whispered Valentina, kneeling in front of the homemade iconostasis on the nail box. The words of prayer flowed as usual, giving the morning heart peace. Behind bars, she prayed every day, asking not for a miracle, but for the strength to endure the test. Now I asked for the same thing, only the test was called freedom. After prayer, breakfast from leftovers of yesterday's bread and tea brewed in a tin mug, then work. Stepanok taught her to read the city like a book, where to look for aluminum cans, where cardboard is thrown away, at what time it is better to bypass office centers. "The main thing is not to be shy," he instructed when they first went fishing. "You don't steal, you clean up what people don't need. This is honest work. For a month, Valentina learned to distinguish metal varieties, determine the quality of waste paper, to bargain with the receivers, 30 to 50 rub a day. This was enough for bread, milk, and cereals. Sometimes it was possible to buy a piece of cheese or apples. Kalyunia turned out to be an unexpected companion. Sober, he was a completely different person, smart, delicate, with encyclopedic knowledge. He explained to Valentina how mobile phones are arranged, talked about new technologies that appeared while she was sitting. Imagine, Valentine, now on the phone, can be filmed. The quality, however, is so-so, but still in 10 years, probably, everyone will walk with cameras in their pocket. On that May Day, they walked around the new office center on the Garden Ring, a glass tower that was not in 97th. There were garbage containers near the service entrance. Stepanok dug into one, choosing cardboard boxes. Kalyunia checked the second. Valentina Romanovna, look. Kalyunia called. Someone's phone here. Threw it away. She approached and saw a black button machine in the chest of office paper in a branded leather case. The inscription on the Siemens case. The phone looked expensive, almost new. Is he a worker? Asked Valentina. Kalyunia turned. The device is in his hands. I found the power button. The screen remained dark. The battery has sat down. But if you charge? Stepanovich thought, craving the back of his head. My tight in one boiler room came across a cord from charging, sort of like from a cell phone. We can check if it comes. This is a nearby abandoned boiler room in an old house in a melee. Electricity is still connected there. The meter is not sealed. I sometimes spend the night there in winter, when it is very cold. After 2 hours they were sitting in a semi-white boiler house where it smelled of damp and old coal. Stepanov quickly found the charger and connected the phone he found to it. The phone screen flickered and glared in a greenish light. All three leaned closer as if to the crystal ball of the soothsayer. It works, Kalyunia rejoiced. Look, there are videos. He poked ineptly in the button, studying the unfamiliar menu. Valentina looked at the screen indifferently, that she was up to other people's videos. But when Kalyunia launched the first file, her heart went wild. A familiar face appeared on the small screen. Mikhail, her husband, whom she allegedly killed, is alive, smiling, hugging a tall blonde in an expensive fur coat. 2 years of our love, he said, kissing a woman on the cheeks. Do you remember how it all started? We're still afraid that your wife would suspect something. Valentina grabbed the phone with trembling hands. At the bottom of the screen, the date was shining, March 15th, 2004, a month ago. The facade of the Metropole Hotel flashed in the frame with recognizable columns. Valentina, what's wrong with you? Stepanovich asked in fright. She couldn't answer, throat intercepted as if swallowed. Hot coal. Michael is alive. Living and healthy, she meets with her mistress, celebrates the anniversary of the relationships, and she served 6 years for his murder. This is my husband, she whispered. I was sitting for allegedly killing him. Antonia turned pale, immediately sobering up completely. Jesus Christ, so how did he set me up? Valentina began to cry, not shy about tears. I staged a murder, disappeared, and I was convicted. I'm all. Said she was innocent, but no one believed. Stepanok silently hugged her by the shoulders. We sat for a minute in silence, listening to water dripping somewhere. This is proof, said Kalyunia quietly. Date, place, his face. He's alive, so there was no murder. But will they believe in court? Valentina wiped her tears with the back of her hand. They can say that the video is fake. No, objected Kalyunia, carefully studying the screen. You see, there is not only date, but also geolocation, GPS coordinates, location. In 2004, this cannot be done, and the quality is too bad for installation. Why would anyone falsify such an amateur video? Valentina looked at the screen again. Mikhail laughed, telling a blonde a story. The same voice, the same gestures, the same mole near the left ear. Only he looked younger and more satisfied than on their last evening together. You know what? Stepanok got up and started walking around the boiler room. This is not an accident. This is a sign from above. The Lord does not give man the tests of superpowers. Once he sent you this proof, then it's time to restore justice. But how? Valentina felt like a song in front of the mountain. Who, me? Will listen? I'm a former son, and he probably has already drawn up new documents, arranged a new life. We have to go to the prosecutor's office, Kalyunia said decisively. With this phone, let him look at the date, at the shooting location. This is an iron argument. I agree, Stepanovich supported. Only carefully. The phone must be saved, the video must be copied. Witnesses to the find must be found. I'm ready to confirm that we found it together in a dumpster. And I too, added Kalyunia. Moreover, I can explain the technical side, how the date recording works, why the video can't be done retroactively. Valentina again looked at the icon of St. Nicholas, which she had been holding in her hand all this time. Holy patron innocently. The convicts looked at her from a paper picture calmly and encouragingly. Our Father, and go to heaven, she whispered. Thank you for this sign. Give the strength to get to the end. In the evening in the trailer, they reviewed everything again. Video and the phone. In addition to the video, the metropolis had several more recordings. Mikhail with the same woman in a restaurant, in some apartment in the country. The dates of 2003 to 2004 were everywhere. A whole parallel life that he led while she was rotting in prison. Will you go to the prosecutor's office tomorrow? Asked Stepanovich. I'll go, Valentina answered firmly. Stop hiding in the corners. It's time for everyone to tell the truth. She went to bed with the phone under her pillow, afraid that this is all a dream. But no, the find was real, the video too. For the first time in 6 years, she had real hope. Trees were whispering outside the window. Somewhere in the distance, the city of night was noisy. Valentina closed her eyes and mentally thanked God for strange ways in which he leads man to the truth. A new life will begin tomorrow, a life in which she will fight for her good name. Morning Moscow greeted Valentina with the noise of trams and the smell of the street. She was walking, too, to the prosecutor's office, clutching the phone tightly in his hand, the only proof of his innocence. Every step was given in the temples. The heart beat so loudly that it seemed to be heard by passers-by. The road took over an hour. I had to save on transport. Valentina wandered along familiar streets and involuntarily plunged into the past, into that life when she was not a former prisoner, but simply Valentina Romanovna Ostashova from a good, intelligent family. Childhood passed in the very mansion in Zamoskvorechi where strangers now live. Father Roman Nikolaevich worked as an engineer as a bridge builder in Moshchepero 3. Tall, a little sulked, from constant sitting over the drawings, he came home late, but I always found time to talk to my daughter about life history books. Valyusha, he said, showing the bridge diagrams. Do you see this support? The most important part of the design. If it is strong, the bridge will stand on the eyelid, and if the base is rotted, everything will collapse. So in life, the main solid foundation. Mom Evgenia Petrovna taught Russian language and literature at school number 42. Small, graceful, with live brown eyes, she knew how to find beauty in simple things. I read to Valentina Pushkin and Lermontov, took her to theaters, taught her to appreciate real art. The special pride of the family is the collection of Pavlovo Posad shawls, inherited from great-grandmother Alexandra Vasilievna, 15 shawls of the 19th century, each work of art. Valentina remembered how her mother carefully took them out of the cedar chest, spread them on the table, telling the story of each pattern. This, Princess Swan. You see what kind of swans are graceful, and this is a Russian winter. The craftsman hand-painted each snowflake. Your great-grandmother was from the Volkonsky noble family. She collected the collection all her life. Now this is our heritage, Valyusha. Take care of him. Grandfather Nikolai Romanovich acquired the mansion in the 25th year from emigrating nobles. Then he worked in the People's Commissar for Heavy Affairs, received a good salary. I bought it not for profit. I just liked the house, and the price was funny. The former owners left light, sold everything they pressed for next to nothing. Grandfather said that he bought not a house but a piece of Russian history, my mother recalled. Ostrovsky once visited here. I played the piano in the living room, young Rachmaninoff. The walls remember conversations about literature, disputes about the fate of Russia. Valentina grew up in an atmosphere of books, music, and family warmth. She studied diligently. She was an excellent student at school, got gold, medal. She entered the philological faculty of Moscow State University without exams. She graduated with honors in the 84th year. After university, she got a job as an editor at the Enlightenment Publishing House. I liked the work, edited textbooks. По литературе иногда писала методические статьи, коллеги уважали за профессионализм и человеческие качества. Но личная жизнь не складывалась. В студенческие годы были романы, но ни один не перерос в серьезные отношения. Or difficult. Good men were busy. Free men often turned out to be frivolous or simply uninteresting. Parents did not press, but Valentina saw a quiet sadness in her mother's eyes. Evgenia Petrovna dreamed of grandchildren, imagined how she would read fairy tales to them, sews dresses for dolls. But time passed. My daughter was left alone. In the 91st year, parents died in a car accident on the Yaroslavl highway. Dad was taking Mom to the hospital. Had a heart attack. A truck rammed a Zhiguli on an icy road. Both died instantly. Valentina buried them at the Novodevichi cemetery next to her grandfather. She stood at the fresh graves and felt like an orphaned child, although it was already 28. The mansion was empty. The collection of scarves lay in the chest with unclaimed beauty. It was then, in the summer of the 92nd, that she met Mikhail. Bought at the cooperative, market near. Izmailovsky Park gifts for colleagues, matrices, and other souvenirs. Times were difficult. Salaries at the publishing house were delayed. We had to save. He stood at the counter with folk crafts. 34-year-old man, pretty, good, dressed, chose Kokloma spoons, asked the seller about something. Valentina unwittingly listened to the conversation. "We need authentic products," he said. "I have partners from Germany, they understand Russian art. Fake-ins won't work. The seller threw up his hands, they say. That is. Mikhail sighed sadly, began to leave. Valentina came up herself, not realizing what was pushing her. "Sorry, I accidentally heard. Are you looking for real Russian crafts?" He turned around, smiled. "Charming, open. Yeah, but here's the department." Mikhail Berestov extended his hand. "Do you know antiques?" "Valentina." "Ostashova. I understand a little. I have at home. Collection of Pavlovo Posad shawls of the 6th century. Legacy from great-grandmother." His eyes lit up with genuine interest. "Pavlovo Posad." "Yes. This is the dream of any collector. Can I take a look, you? See, I'm just right. I plan to export Russian antiques to Europe. There is a huge demand for authentic things." That's how it all started. Mikhail came to visit a week later with a bouquet of white roses and a box of sweets. Consigned scarves with a view. An expert admired the quality of painting, talked about plans to create a company for the export of Russian art. Can you imagine, Valentine? In Germany, one such scarf costs thousands of brands, but in our country no one appreciates them. Barbarism. It is necessary to show Europe the real Russian beauty. He was charming, educated, able to speak beautifully. He talked about trips abroad, about business plans, about love for Russian culture. Valentina listened for, expressed. A man burst into her lonely life, who shared her interests, understood the value of the family heritage. He took care of beautifully, took to theaters, restaurants, gave flowers, talked about a joint future, about how they were. Together we'll develop business, travel around the world, showing people the treasure of Russian art. You will become my muse, he whispered, kissing his hands. Together we will create a beauty empire. Your collection, base, and mine. Business flair will help bring her to the world. Valentina believed every word. After loneliness and loss, his attention seemed like a gift of fate. She fell in love not only with him, but also with the future he drew, where her scarves will become pride. Russian art abroad. Only now, after years of prison and humiliation, did she understand how skillfully he had woven his web. Every compliment, every promise was calculated to lull her vigilance. From the beginning, he was not hunting a woman, but a collection, a mansion, all family heritage. Valentina stopped in front of the prosecutor's office and took a deep breath. In his pocket was a phone with evidence of his lies. It was time. Tell the truth about this man who knew how to pretend so skillfully that even the court believed in his death. "Well, Valentina Romanovna," she whispered to herself, "time to collect stones." Climbing the steps. Prosecutors. Valentina continued to throw out the past, as if sorting through a rosary of pain. Every memory responded to the heart with dumb pain, but she made herself remember. It was necessary to understand exactly where her journey to disaster began. After meeting on the market, Mikhail began to appear in her life more and more often, called every day, invited to the theater, to new restaurants, which were then opened throughout Moscow, to the National, to the Slavic Bazaar, even to the famous Pushkinon. Tverskoy Boulevard, where dinner cost his monthly salary. "Money should work," he said, ordering expensive wine. "I have a good period now." Partners from Hamburg transferred the advance payment of the first batch of goods. "Soon we will become millionaires," Valyusha. His confidence was mesmerizing. In those dashing years, Many made their fortune from scratch, traded everything in a row, traveled abroad with suitcases of goods. Why not become Russian antiques? Gold mine? Wedding was played in January 93rd, modestly with friends. Mikhail insisted that she leave her maiden name. You see, Valyusha, family history is important for European business. Ostasheva is the same, practically a noble family. A Berestov sounds too simple. Customers should feel aristocracy. The logic seemed convincing. Valentina agreed, not suspecting that she was giving the keys to the family to the predator. Safe. After the wedding, they settled in the mansion. Mikhail studied every room with delight, was interested in the history of everything. He was especially attracted by documents for the house and collection. He sat for hours with folders, studying certificates of the origin of scarves, expert estimates. We need to arrange everything correctly, he explained. Export requires certificates of the cultural value of the permission of the Ministry of Culture, the bureaucracy of the sea, but without this in any way. First 2 years of marriage were honey. Mikhail surrounded her with care, gave gifts, made plans, talked about negotiations with German collectors, showed letters from potential buyers. Everything looked serious and promising. The only thing that darkened happiness, the children did not work out. The doctors threw up their hands. Tests for both are ideal. There is no pathology, and pregnancy does not occur. Mikhail consoled, offered not to rush. Maybe it's for the best, he said. First, we'll put the case on our feet, then we'll take care of the family. Children demand full dedication, and we now have a crucial period. Even bought her vitamins, expensive imported pills for women's health. Valentina drank them obediently, hoping that the body will get stronger and give them an heir. Only years later, in a prison hospital, she learned the terrible truth from a gynecologist. The symptoms that she had in marriage are characteristic of the regular use of contraceptives. Mikhail slipped her hormones to prevent pregnancy. He did not need children, only property. The first suspicions crept in on her 95th year. Mikhail began to often linger, referring to business. Meetings, came home late, smelled like someone else's spirits, spoke on the phone in a whisper, quickly dropping calls when she appeared. Work, currency, he brushed it off. Negotiations with new partners, they're serious people. Privacy comes first. But the woman's heart felt a lie. Valentina began to look closely. Listen, I found in the pockets of his jackets receipts from restaurants for two, notes with female names, chewing gum with an unfamiliar lipstick flavor. Business also stalled. The promised deliveries were all postponed. German partners suddenly became unavailable. Letters did not come. Mikhail answered questions evasively. The crisis in Europe, purchasing power has fallen, but this is temporary. Things will get better soon. In the 97th, Valentina accidentally saw an SMS on his new mobile phone. Mikhail left the receiver on the kitchen table, and he went to shower. The screen glowed with an incoming message from a certain Lika. Misha, dear, when will we finally get rid of this problem? I'm tired of hiding. Valentina, with trembling hands, flipped through the correspondence. What she read turned her world upside down. Head. The plan will work. The old one will soon disappear, wrote Mikhail. Everything is ready. It remains to wait for the right moment. Will there definitely be money? Asked. Lika. House one is worth $500,000. Plus, collection. We'll live like people, baby. When will you act? Soon. Patience, my good. Valentina barely read it to the end. Hands shook so hard that the phone almost fell out, so all this time he planned to kill her. All these years of love, care, joint plans, everything was a lie. She put the phone back and ran out of the house. For several hours she wandered around Moscow, trying to comprehend what she had read. Inside everything broke off as if a taut string was torn. She returned late, when Mikhail was already asleep, lay down next to him and looked at the ceiling all night, listening to his breathing. At breakfast in the morning, he was ordinary, smiling, caring. Valyusha, you were kind of pale. Didn't get sick? No, I just didn't sleep well. Maybe you go to the doctor? Or, will we go on vacation? I'm looking out for a trip to Sochi. She nodded, kept the conversation going, and inside everything got cold. This man planned her death and at the same time could calmly discuss the vacation. Valentina decided to file for divorce, secretly went to a lawyer, began to draw up documents, but did not have time. Mikhail got ahead of her. Fatal evening happened at the end. On October, Mikhail came home with a bouquet of roses and a bottle of French champagne. We have a holiday, Valyusha. The Germans finally agreed to the first batch. The contract has been signed. The money will be in a week. He was extraordinarily cheerful, hugging her, circling her. Around the room, opened the champagne, poured it into the glasses. "For us, my dear, for our happy future." Valentina raised a glass, but did not drink. Something was alarming in his eyes. Too bright shine, too wide smile. "Misha, and show the contract. It's interesting. I'll show you tomorrow." He stayed in the office. "Now, let's just be happy." He drank his glass with a volley, hurried her. Valentina psyched the champagne and felt a strange taste, bitter, metallic. Imperceptibly poured the wine into a pot of flour. "Misha, I'm going to the toilet." "Of course, darling." In the bathroom, she caused vomiting, then rinsed her mouth for a long time. My heart was paling, so the moment has come. He'll try to kill her today. She returned to the living room. Mikhail was standing at the window, talking on the phone. "Yeah, it's all according to plan. In half an hour? No, she doesn't suspect anything." Seeing her quickly drop the call, it was the partners who called, specified details of the contract. Valentina sat down in a chair, pretended to feel dizzy. "Something bad for me. Maybe from champagne lying. Down, darling, he'll pass now." She closed her eyes, pretending to lose consciousness. Mikhail came closer, leaned over her. Something sharp, a kitchen knife, flashed in his hands. "Goodbye, Valyusha," he whispered. "Nothing personal." At the last moment, Valentina recoiled sharply. The knife slashed on her, hand leaving a deep scratch. Mikhail stumbled and fell. Valentina jumped out of the house and ran to the neighbors. Then everything happened as in a nightmare. Police, investigators, witnesses. Neighbors testified they saw Valentine. Ran out of the house with a bloody hand. A knife with her prints and traces of blood was found in the house, and Michael was not there. His mother, Nina Sergeevna, sobbing, told investigators that her son called her and complained about his wife's aggressive behavior. Witnesses appeared who allegedly heard their quarrels. The forensic expert found traces of a struggle in the house, but Mikhail himself was not found. A month later, in the Moscow River, the corpse of an undocumented man, mutilated too. Unrecognizable. The examination showed that it could be Mikhail Berestov. Only now did Valentina understand how carefully this operation was prepared. Surely the corpse was taken out of the morgue, and witnesses received money for false testimony. In the dashing 90s, bribing an investigator or expert was a matter of technology, and she, gullible, naive, fell into this trap like a moth for fire. Mikhail studied her psychology, knew that she was not capable of cruelty, that she would believe in love and be deceived, the perfect victim for a perfectly planned crime. Valentina stopped in front of the entrance to the prosecutor's office. In the phone pocket with evidence of his deception seemed like a hot coal. It was time to start a struggle for justice, a struggle that could be the last in her life. The corridors of the inner district prosecutor's office smelled of state paint and musty, with paper. Valentina sat on a hard bench, clutching the coveted phone in her hands and waiting for the reception. The heart beat so loudly that it seemed to be heard by all people passing by. "Ostashova Valentina Romanovna, gone." A tired voice. "Come on in." At the table sat a man of about old with siring temples and attentive gray eyes. The badge was listed. Sergachev Vasily Andreevich, senior investigator. "Sit down." He pointed to the chair. "Opposite. The prosecutor on duty gave me your request. The case is 98th, and allegedly the murder of her husband. I must say right away that we can revise the sentences that have come into force only if there is new evidence." Valentina took out her phone and put it on the table. "I have proof. Video footage taken in March this year. It's my husband, whom I allegedly killed 7 years ago." Vasily Andreevich chuckled skeptically. "Citizen Ostashova, I understand your desire to justify yourself, but the court is not a toy. How many attempts have there been to appeal the verdict using different documents?" "Look," Valentina said firmly. "Just look." Sergachev reluctantly took the phone, turned on the video. On. Mikhail's face appeared on the screen, living, smiling, hugging a blonde at the entrance to the metropolis. The investigator frowned, reviewed the recording again, carefully studied the date. "Where did you get this? I found it in a dumpster." "You?" "I have witnesses to the find, 2 men who helped me collect waste paper." Vasily Andreevich leaned back in the chair, rubbised his bridge of the nose. In his eyes, skepticism was replaced by professional interest. "This is not enough. Video could. Mount, date make. Then conduct an examination." Valentina did not back down. "I'm ready for any checks." Sergachev was silent for a long time, studying her face. Then he suddenly asked, "Tell us about your husband. What was the name, where he worked, what? Dressed?" "Valentina." Described in detail Mikhail, his habits, manner of speaking, a mole near her left ear, a scar on her palm from a childhood injury. Sergachev listened attentively, sometimes asking clarifying questions. "You know," he said finally, "a brilliant actress. Or tell the truth, and in 30 years of work I have learned to distinguish one from the other." He stood up, went to the window. Behind the glass were gray roofs and a vacant lot where children played football. "I also have a story of injustice," he said quietly. "The wife died in the 98th of appendicitis. Banal appendicitis, you know. Regional hospital said, the queue for the operation is 2 weeks, in a private clinic. We're ready to do immediately, but for 50,000 rubles. He fell silent as he looked at the children playing. "We didn't have that kind of money. I'm an investigator, not a businessman. We thought that 2 weeks was not critical. We made a mistake. Peritonitis developed in 4 days. Valentina felt her throat tighten. "Sorry, my daughter still blames me," continued Sergachev. "He says your job is more important than your family. I could have taken a bribe, like others. I would have saved my mother. And you're right about something. The system is imperfect, and honesty sometimes kills." He turned to Valentina. "I'll study your case. If I find a violation in the investigation, I will report to the prosecutor about the inspection. But I warn you, the procedure is long. There is a lot of bureaucracy." The next 2 weeks dragged on painfully. Valentina came to the prosecutor's office every day, but Sergachev was busy. He finally called her again. "The report has been submitted," he said without preface. The prosecutor agreed to check. "Here's the ruling." Valentina took the official paper with trembling hands. "What does that mean, so? We have a month to find new evidence of your innocence or to confirm the correctness of the old sentence. And what are you? Already found?" Sergachev took out a thick folder. "Your business is an example of the haltura of the 90s. The investigation was conducted carelessly. The examinations were carried out formally. Witness accounts are contradictory, some clearly fabricated." He opened the folder, showed the photos. For example, a blood examination on a knife. The conclusion was made 2 days after the seizure of the material. The technology of those years required at least a week. Someone very hurried. This means that the examination is fake, most likely, but it's hard to prove it. The expert died 3 years ago from a heart attack. Sergachev made a few more pages. The witnesses are also interesting. Citizen Petrova, who allegedly heard your quarrels with your husband, moved to America immediately after the trial. Citizen Ivanov, who saw how you ran out of the house with a knife, turned out to be an experienced drug addict. His testimony, in principle, could not be accepted in attention. And the investigator who conducted the case, Colonel Zuev, resigned in 2000 and one of his own free will. They say he was caught on a bribe, but the case was hushed up. Now he works as a security guard in a supermarket. Valentina listened and did not believe. It turns out that the whole system worked against her, from the district police officer to the prosecutor. But how is this possible? Was everyone bribed? Not everything. Sergachev shook his head. Just in those years, many worked carelessly. The detection of crimes was more important than the truth. There is a corpse, there is a suspect, which means that the case can be closed. He closed the folder. Now the hardest part is finding your husband alive. I have already given instructions to the operatives. We checked databases throughout the country. A week later, the results came. Major Rodionov from the search department laid out printouts on the table. "There is information," he said. "A certain Mikhail Stepanovich Klimov is on the wanted list for fraud in Rostov-on-Don and Krasnodar. External signs coincide with the description of your husband." Valentina looked at the photo. Even in poor quality, it was clear that this was Mikhail, aged, with a beard, but definitely he. "The scheme is the same," continued the major. "To meet single women, enters into trust, gains access to property. In Rostov, he robbed the widow of a military pensioner for 200,000 rubles. In Krasnodar, he registered an apartment. An elderly teacher, then disappeared. Where is he now? Installed. Lives in the Moscow region, in Odintsovo, with a certain Alla Viktorovna Serebryakova. Widow, 50 years old. The husband was the deputy director of the plant. Car, house, savings, everything he likes." Sergachev carefully studied the documents. "What surname does he live under?" "Berestov." The passport appears to be fake. I see. This means that he never changed the legend to the end. The investigator thought about it. Need to take it. Be careful. If the scarecrow disappears again, it will be difficult to find. What do you suggest? Observation. Let's collect evidence of his current activities, and then take it red-handed. At the same time, we will conduct an examination of the video. It is necessary officially. Confirm that this is not a fake. Valentina sat and listened to two professionals planning an operation to capture the man who ruined her life. For the first time in years, she felt that justice. Possible. How long will it take? 2 or 3 months, answered Sergeyev. You can't rush. We must do everything according to the law, so that later there are no complaints. What if he goes into hiding? Will. Not hide. He considers himself invulnerable. Valentina Ostashova is in prison. The case is closed. You can live in peace. Such criminals rarely change tactics. Why if the old one works in? The evening, Valentina went to her trailer and thought about the strange twists of fate. A month ago, she was a nobody, a former prisoner without documents or livelihood. And now the state machine has begun to work in its favor. But most importantly, she met a man who believed her. Vasily Andreevich also suffered from imperfect system, lost his wife due to bureaucracy and indifference. Maybe that's why he saw her story as a reflection of her own pain. In the trailer, Stepanek and Kalyunia were waiting for her with dinner, potatoes, and stew. Well, how are things in the prosecutor office? Asked Stepanovich. We started checking. The investigator turned out to be a good person. That's nice, Kalyunia smiled. So the truth will prevail. The truth triumphs slowly, Valentina corrected. But that's right. She took out an icon of St. Nicholas and quietly thanked for the help sent. The path to the truth turned out to be long and winding, but she no longer doubted that she would reach. End. August stretched a slow river of waiting. 3 months of careful preparation turned Valentina's life into a series of meetings with operatives, studying case materials and endless procedures. Vasily Andreevich worked methodically, not missing a single detail. You can't rush, he repeated when Valentina began to get nervous. One mistake, and it's all for the smart. He will have a good lawyer. The case will fall apart in court. First of all, they achieved court sanction on phone tapping. The judge, an elderly woman with tired eyes, studied the materials for a long time. There is a basis, she said finally. I permit an audition for 2 months, but remember, any violation. Procedures and evidence will not be accepted in court. The operatives installed the equipment. Major Rodionov regularly reported on the results. An interesting picture emerges, he said, showing printouts of conversations. Yours. The ex-husband has not changed, is in the confidence of Sarah Barakova, plans to arrange her apartment for herself. Valentina read the transcripts with a painful feeling. The same intonations, the same techniques that I once used with her. Achka, dear, you understand. I need guarantees, Mikhail said in the entry dated August 15th. I invest my last money in the business, and if something happens to you, I will be left with nothing. Misha, but a will. It sounds so scary, the woman answered. What are you? It's just a formality. You're healthy, young. But I will be calm about our future. Classic divorce for real estate, commented Sergeyev. I'm sorry for the woman. Surely thinks that I found love in my old age. At the end of August, Mikhail decided to take a decisive step. The intercepted conversation with Neki Petrovich showed that he was going to make the will of Alla Viktorovna. The document will be indistinguishable from the original, assured Petrovich. The paper is suitable, the seal is real. Just find a notary flexible one, and if he refuses to assure, then look for another. For that kind of money, he will agree. The operation was scheduled for September 3rd. Mikhail came to the notary office on the Arbat with a fake will and a thick pack of dollars. Operatives were waiting at the next entrance. Notary Elena Viktorovna Samoylova turned out to be principled, a woman. She carefully studied the document, checked with samples of signatures. Young man, she said sternly, this fake is pretty rude, by the way. What do you think I'm seeing? Fake wills for the first time. Mikhail turned pale. Tried to persuade. Elena Viktorovna, maybe you're wrong? Look, again. I call the police, the notary snapped. At that moment, operatives entered the office. Mikhail Stepanovich Korneev, a.k.a. Berestov, also known as Klimov, said Major Rodionov. You're detained on suspicion of fraud. Mikhail dashed to the exit, but his way was blocked by a second operative. He did not resist, apparently understood. Futility. By what right? He asked, trying to preserve his dignity. I have a lawyer. Call from the department. Rodionov answered indifferently, putting on handcuffs. Search of an apartment in Odinsovo gave sensational results. 12 Pavlovo Posad shawls from Valentina's collection were found in a cache for a false panel. They were lying in a cedar chest, wrapped in silk fabric, exactly as my mother kept them, so he didn't sell. Was surprised. Vasily Andreevich. He birched like a stash for a rainy day. Valentina took in her hands the headscarf of the Swan Princess, the same one that her mother showed her as a child. The fabric retained the smell of cedar and lavender, which my grandmother put over the shawls. He still loved beautiful things, she said quietly. Maybe deep down he understood their value or was just greedy, objected Major Rodionov. I thought that someday he would sell profitably. The confrontation was assigned a week later. Valentine prepared for the meeting like an exam. Galina, her friend, a theater artist, helped to put herself in order. Valyusha, you have to look decent, she said, styling her hair. Let this bimperer see that. Didn't break you. Galina borrowed a good suit, shoes, even picked up lipstick. Valentina looked in the mirror and did not recognize herself. For the first time in years, she looked like the former Valentina Romanovna Ostashova, and not like a former Zhkachka. The investigation office was small and stuffy. Mikhail sat at the table accompanied by a lawyer, a self-confident young man. Seeing Valentina, he turned pale and looked away as if he had seen a ghost. And you know, this man? Sergachev asked. Yes, Valentina answered firmly. This is my ex-husband Mikhail Korneev, who adopted the surname Berestov after the wedding. The client is not obliged to answer, the lawyer intervened. Let him answer, Mikhail said unexpectedly. Stop being silent. He raised his head, looked into Valentina's eyes. In his eyes, fatigue and some kind of hopelessness were read. Yes, it was me, Mikhail Korneev, who staged. Own death in the 97th year. The lawyer shuddered, tried to stop the client, but he waved his hand. Why did you do that? Asked Sergachev. Mikhail was silent, choosing his words. You won't understand. You were one of those who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He looked at Valentina with bitterness. Mansion in the center of Moscow, collection of antiques, education, and I am a communal apartment. Mother is a cleaner. I don't know my father. You rich think we owe you to serve a lifetime. But why set me up? Asked Valentina. What else could I do? Mikhail was talking faster, as if a dam had broken. Just get divorced and be left with nothing. I worked for you for 5 years, portrayed loving husband. Consider working his own. And the collection? Why, did you steal her? Didn't. Steele took what he deserved. He fired in. You think it was easy to tolerate your intellectual arrogance? Misha is the 15th century. Be careful. Misha is a museum value. I felt like a savage in your house all the time. Valentina listened and was surprised. It turns out that he saw her concern for cultural heritage as arrogance, and the desire to preserve beauty as contempt. To ordinary people. Did your mother also participate in the scheme? Asked Sergachev. Mikhail snicked. Mom, she thought she was helping me settle in life. She used old party connections, negotiated with the investigator. I'm her. Said his wife wanted to get a divorce and take all the property. Did she know you were alive? No. That is, in general terms. I thought that I was just hiding from the divorce. My mother is a simple woman. She does not understand the legal subtleties. Nina Sergeyevna was brought in an hour later. A 70-year-old woman in a faded coat cried without ceasing. Mishenka, son, what have you done? She read. I tried for you. Wanted you to live like people. Did you know that? Did your son fake his own death? Asked the investigator. No, Nina Sergeyevna sobbed. He said that his wife offends him, wants to expel him from the house. I thought, in our time of divorce, it was difficult to divide property. I agreed with Zuev to help my son. And what should Zuev have done? Don't know. Mikhail said to arrange everything correctly so that the house would remain with him. I thought it was legal. Vasily Andreevich looked at the crying old woman with pity. Blind, maternal love pushed her to complicity in the crime. Nina Sergeyevna, you understand that because of your actions, an innocent woman spent 7 years in prison. The old woman looked at Valentina, frightened. Eyes Forgive me, she whispered. I didn't want to. I thought Miss Schenke was right. Valentina suddenly felt not anger but pity for this woman. Nina Sergeyevna tried to protect. The only son in the only way available to her through old connections from a past life. Both were arrested on the same day. Mikhail walked calmly, as if relieved that the secret had been revealed. Mother sobbed and repeated, I tried for you, son. For you? In the evening, Vasily Andreevich took Valentina to the bus stop. We were silently passing. Everyone was thinking of their own. Thank you, she said finally. Without you, I would never have achieved justice. This is the job, he replied simply. It's not just work, though. It was important for me to prove that the system can work honestly, too. They stopped at the stop. Evening Moscow was noisy around. Machines, people, life. What will happen now? Asked Valentina. Court, rehabilitation, return of property. Long, but we'll get to the end. I meant us. Vasily Andreevich smiled for the first time in all the months of his acquaintance. And what? About us, my daughter thinks you're a money hunter. Says again some aunt is entangling his father. And what do you answer her that? Not every woman who appears in my life is an adventurer. Sometimes it's just a good person in trouble. The bus came. Valentina sat by the window and waved to him. Ahead were the court, the restoration of rights, the return to normal life. But most importantly, justice finally triumphed. And a man appeared in her life who believed her when no one believed in her. Maybe it was also a kind of justice belated, but no less important for it. The winter trial passed without surprises. Mikhail received 8 years in a strict regime colony for fraud and falsification of evidence. His mother, Nina Sergeyevna, was sentenced to 3 years, suspended, taking into account age and remorse. The old woman cried in the courtroom. I repeat everything. Forgive me, Valia, forgive the old fooling. Valentina approached her after the verdict was announced. I hold no evil, she said quietly. You loved your son. This is not a crime. The rehabilitation process took 1.5 years. The bureaucratic machine was slow. Each certificate required walking through the authorities. Only by the fall of 2005, Valentina officially became rehabilitated, received the right to return property and compensation. The mansion met her for nothing. Over the years of someone else's ownership, the house has become dilapidated. The roof leaked, the plaster fell off, the wiring needed to be replaced, and plumbing. The oil worker's family moved out without a scandal, even apologized for the inconvenience. The collection was partially restored. 12 scarves were found at Mikhail's. Another one surfaced at the auction. I had to redeem for a lot of money. 2 were never found. The money for the repairs was given by a rare handkerchief from 1840 with the painting Russian seasons. Experts estimated it at 150,000 rubles. The antique market was booming. Collectors hunted for genuine rarities. It's a pity to part, Valentina admitted to the appraiser, but the house is more important. Shaw should live in a beautiful place. The repair started serious. In the basement, I decided to equip a workshop, restoration of textiles, the point in which the soul lay and which could generate income. Stepanok and Kalyunia became the first assistants. Valentina invited them to live in a house, in an attic apartment, which was equipped from the former pantry. Valentina, but we are ordinary people. Stepanovich was embarrassed. It is not for us to live in such a house. Nonsense, she dismissed. The house is big. There will be enough space for everyone. And I need assistance. Who else is so subtle about old things? Kalyunia finally gave up drinking, restored the documents, and officially got a job at the workshop. It turned out that his organizational skills and technical literacy came in handy in business. Relations with Vasily Andreevich developed slowly in an adult way. They met, went to theaters, talked about books and work. His daughter Ekaterina initially met Valentina with, Cool, Dad, did this aunt come again? The 17-year-old girl asked. Is she not enough money sticking to you? Katya, don't. Be silly. Her father gently besieged. Valentina Romanovna, good. Man. Yeah. Good, the girl snorted. I know all those good ones. But gradually the ice melted. Valentina did not impose, did not try to replace the girl's mother. She was just there when she needed help with study or female. Advice. The wedding was played in the summer of 2006, modestly in Zaxia in the circle of close friends. Katya came in a white dress and smiled at Valentina for the first time without coercion. "Dad is happy," she said after the ceremony. "I haven't seen him like this for a long time." They decided to live in the mansion. Vasily Andreevich's apartment was cramped for the large family they planned to create. A month after the wedding, Valentina met Daria. In the children's domain of Makarenko, she appeared in the case, restored ancient banners for the Pradeda Museum. A 5-year-old girl was sitting in a corner of the reading room and looking at a picture book. "Beautiful handkerchiefs," she said, after seeing photographs of the Pavlova Posad. "Products in the album. Do you like it?" Valentina sat down next to her. "Uh-huh, only I don't have those. I have nothing at all." Valentina's heart was jarring. Daria was limping the consequences of a car accident in which her parents died. Doctors. They said that lameness is being corrected, but surgery and long rehabilitation are needed. "Do you want me to give you a handkerchief?" suggested Valentina. "Really, you can. Of course. Only first I need to talk to my Aunt Anna Petrovna. Daughter. Issued for winter." The operation on the leg was performed in the best clinic in Moscow, partly at the expense of the state, partly for their own money. The rehabilitation took 6 months, but the result exceeded expectations. Daria began to walk normally, only a little, liming when tired. The workshop was gaining momentum. The first orders came from the historical museum. It was necessary to restore the collection of church covers of the 15th century. Valentina worked with jewelry precision, restoring threads, and paints, returning the tissues to their original appearance. By the end of 2006, it was possible to pay normal salaries to employees. Stepanov became a senior woodworker, made picture frames and stretcher frames for restored fabrics. Kalyunia was in charge of the farm, negotiated with customers and made estimates. In early 2007, Valentina realized that she was pregnant. Late pregnancy at 43, but modern. Medical support is quite safe. The Planned Parenthood Center offered full surveillance. There are risks, the doctor honestly warned, but modern technologies allow them to be reduced to minimum. "We will observe every 2 weeks." Vasily Andreevich shone with happiness. "Son," he said, stroking Valentine's stomach. "Necessarily a son. We'll name Roman after your father. Pregnancy was not easy, but without critical complications. Roman was born in July 2007, a healthy, strong boy weighing 3 kilograms 200 grams. Handsome, Stepanovich was afraid, shaking the baby in his arms. The Spitz grandfather, Roman Nikolaevich, judging by the portrait, Katya, who by that time turned 20, was delighted with her brother. "Mom, can I invite my girlfriends home and show my brother? Girls will die of envy." Mom's words sounded naturally, without a stretch. Valentina realized that the family finally took place not quickly but firmly. The summer of the year turned out to be extremely warm. Children played in the garden, the mansion under the old apple tree. 10-year-old Daria built the sandcastle, and 2-year-old Roman diligently destroyed it. The girl patiently explained to her brother that the locks should be protected, not broken. "Roman, don't. It's beautiful." Valentina watched the children from the window of the workshop, where she worked on the restoration of a particularly valuable exhibit. Scarf, from 1860, from the collection of the Tretyakov Gallery. The work required utmost accuracy. Each thread counted. "Aunt Valia, can I see you?" "Come in, sunshine. Just wash your hands." "Girl." I watched with love as Valentina's thin fingers straightened ancient threads, returning the fabric to its original beauty. "Can you teach me how to do this?" "It's definitely when you grow up a little." Portraits of parents hung on the wall of the workshop. Valentina in beautiful frames by Stepanovich. Nearby are photographs of a new family, a wedding with Vasily Andreevich, the first steps of Katya's graduation novel, Dari's birthday. Voices were coming from the basement floor, Stepach explained. Kalyune's subtleties of wood carving. Both now lived in a separate attic apartment, worked in a workshop, and felt like full family members. In the evening, when the children fell asleep, Valentina went out into the garden. Vasily Andreevich sat on a bench under an apple tree and read the newspaper. "How are you in the workshop?" he asked, huging his wife. "Good. There are many orders." The Tretyakov Gallery asks for 2 more scarves to be restored. Soon I'll have to take an assistant. And with, how are the children? Katya is defending his diploma next month. He wants to go to the prosecutor's office to follow in his father's footsteps. Daria is growing smart. She loves to draw. Roman, the novel is just our happiness. They sat in silence, listening to the noise of foliage and distant, the sounds of evening Moscow. A warm light burned in the windows of the house, illuminating family photos and a restored collection of headscarves. You know, Valentina said quietly, sometimes I think, what if this is all a dream? Too good to be. The truth, not a dream. Vasily Andreevich smiled. Just justice, belated but justice. The Lord took it away but gave it as an old man, Valentina whispered, recalling her mother's words. The main thing is not to lose faith in people. And justice. Somewhere in the nursery, Roman cried. Valentina rose to calm her son. Life went on. A simple, happy life that she has earned for years of suffering and patience. B. Workshop on the table was a half-done handkerchief waiting for tomorrow's work. Ancient beauty which survived the ages, found life again in caring hands. Like Valentina herself, who survived pain and betrayal, but retained the ability to love and give joy to others. The circle is closed. The family home became the family home again. Dear friends, did you like the story of the thread of fate? What do you think about Mikhail's act and Valentina's resilience? Write in the comments. Like if history has touched your heart. Share with your friends and subscribe to our channel. In the description you will find a playlist with all our stories. We wish you good health and excellent moods.